Afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another self-directed IRA Saturday. Today we have Sandhya Seshadri on as one of our speakers talking about multifamily syndications today. She's been through corporate America firsthand herself. She saw how people firsthand dedicate so much of themselves to work while missing out on so many opportunities that were out there to grow their wealth. So she's here today with us to share some of that knowledge and wisdom with you that she's gathered in her experience. And we are very, very excited to have you on with us today.
Thank you so much, Brianna. This is so kind of you to have me. And as someone from corporate America transitioning into real estate, I can really see the effect of having an IRA like Quest Trust, where you could invest in a variety of choices rather than just the company sponsored, mutual funds that you're restricted to. So a lot of people don't realize that at all. There's a whole world of investments out there, thanks to companies like Crest, providing a self-directed IRA option.
Absolutely. Well, we're excited to hear about how this can be applied into the self-directed IRA world as well. So with that, I'm going to let you take it away. Everyone online now, feel free to throw your questions in the chat. We will certainly have them pulled up on the screen so we can get those answered for you. But with that being said, it is all yours.
Thank you. Gonna present my slides here. So today my topic is about the top 10 questions that you must ask so you don't lose your money in any investment. And I'm going to focus this mainly on multifamily, but you can certainly apply these questions across whether you're investing in self-storage, mobile home parks, or anything else. These fundamental questions must be asked before you invest your very hard-earned money into something like this. So a little bit about me, background. I'm the president founder of Engineered Capital. That's the name of my company. I've been a general partner, which means I'm sort of like the pilot of the plane, steering the plane to its destination. I've also been a limited partner, which is sort of like the passenger in a plane, sitting back and enjoying the ride, which is what a lot of my investors do. And I've also been what's called a key principal or a loan guarantor, signing loans on these large deals. And now I'm based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've lived here for over 33 years. My background, like most Asian geeks, is in engineering. So math was my favorite subject. Could not understand biology and all those words. Too hard for me, but I could do my numbers. So that led me to the engineering career, from which, even in real estate, understanding of financials is so important in underwriting deals. I've currently got about $140 million worth of assets under management. I've also traded equities for a very long time, for over 25 years. And so the stock market was great for me for a while. But the problem with it was, again, all of my assets were depending on this one volatility of the stock market. And I didn't have a way to put my money into real estate unless I was wanting to do single family rentals or fix and flips, for which I didn't really have a handy person kind of background, to go and know how to fix a leaky toilet. And I certainly didn't want to get that call on a Thanksgiving day. So that's kind of what led me to large scale multifamily. When you have 100 plus doors, you can employ third-party property management companies who run the property for you, who take care of the day-to-day leasing, the maintenance calls, etc. And I'm more of a project manager, asset manager. So on a weekly basis, we go through all of our important, KPIs, as we call them, the collections, the expenses, where's money getting spent, how are we doing in terms of occupancy and other things like that. But I'm also local. So all my properties are located in the Dallas area, where I've lived for 33 years. But it's also a great market right now. So I'm able to visit my properties pretty often. And that's what helps me do the checks and balances, the trust but verify kind of model. I'm an 80s gal. I'm Gen X. So Maverick, which is Top Gun, basically Maverick, the character is one of my favorites because, sometimes he's right. Sometimes he's not so right. He's made a few mistakes in his life. But when it comes to fulfilling the mission, he is unstoppable. He'll do everything he has to do to accomplish that mission. And that's kind of how I feel about multifamily. And Ferris Bueller is another hero of mine, just because, life goes pretty fast. You got to stop and look around once in a while, or you're going to miss it, right? So remember to have that balance. So those two are my heroes. Some of my passion projects include, math tutoring for kids, financial literacy is very important to me. I've been tutoring kids for over a decade now. And it's very exciting to see some of these kids who were failing algebra way back in high school, graduating with mechanical engineering degree. One kid just graduated last month. He's already got a job from Texas A&M, which is a great college. So that's a little bit about my background as to some of my whys. Another thing I love to do at my properties is to have community activities. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But enough about me. Let's see, why should you ask these 10 questions, right? Because a lot of times you are seeing all the hype in social media. 90% of the time when somebody talks about all these great accomplishments in social media, it's their own self-prophecy, right? I mean, they're just talking about themselves. Who verified any of this, right? You got to look beyond social media hype. They may have the nicest looking website. They may have the prettiest looking slides. They may tell you projections are so amazing that you're going to double your money in less than 3 years, kind of numbers, right? So how do you look beyond all that hype? How do you look beyond all of that and actually look at the facts? What are some questions you can ask so that you get down to the true facts of the deal, of the sponsorship team, and you understand all the risks involved in the deal? What am I getting into? Do I really know what am I getting to, right? What could go wrong in this deal? What could go wrong with this team? Do they have the experience I'm looking for to run something like this? Or are they just betting on what happened in the past? If you look at deals that went on from, say, 2015, 2016 till about 2020, 2021, almost everyone made a huge amount of money on multifamily deals because the cap rates were compressed, meaning interest rates were down. So the purchasing power for a buyer was higher. So your property values went up no matter what you did to it. But this year, as you've seen in 2022 to 2023, with 10 interest rate hikes in a row, a lot of real estate has taken a beating. So you really need to know what questions to ask so that you still protect your investment. It doesn't mean you hide and say, I'm never going to invest in real estate again because of these interest rate hikes. I mean, there's always opportunities, but you got to know what questions to ask so that you are fully informed on what the risks are and whether or not you want to take that risk, because these investments involve large sums of money. These are not your Girl Scout cookies, Boy Scout cookies. Here you go, $20. I'll buy from you. No, these are 50K and more, right? These are huge amounts of money. So your investments need to be made very, very carefully. And I'm a passive investor myself, meaning like a passenger in the plane, having no control of the deal in 26 deals. I'm also an active general partner in 8 deals. And so I like to have a balance of both. So I definitely see things in a more unique perspective than the typical sponsor, right? What do they come out and say on social media? They invest passively. It's the best way to invest. But how many of them actually invest passively? When was the last time they invested passively, right? So I see both points of view. And that's why I have these questions that I think will help you understand the risks in your investment. The first and foremost question you need to know is, who is the jockey, right? The sponsorship team who's going to manage this deal is the one who can make or break the deal. Oftentimes, the person you see on social media coming to you saying, here's a great deal, here's all the numbers, etc. A lot of times the people out there marketing the deal, marketing themselves, are not the real jockeys who are going to manage the deal after it closes. Meaning they're with you for those first 30 to 60 days as it leads to the closing. A big celebration email is sent out. Yay, we closed on this deal, $20 million, $200, a 200 unit deal has been acquired. But what happens after that? Who do you talk to after that deal closes? Are these initial folks who marketed the deal to you gone with the wind, right? Who do you talk to? Who's actually managing this asset day to day? Who stays with you for those full 3 to 5 years or whatever that hold period is? Who are you going to call to know what's actually happening with the property? Who's in there who's actually checking on the property? Who's on those weekly calls? Do they even have weekly calls? Is the sponsor located out in, California or Canada, and then the deal is sitting in Dallas or Atlanta, right? Who's visiting the property? Are you paying for all those lovely first-class flights and all the other expenses associated with it? So really get to know who is going to be running the deal after closing. That's the question to ask. Who is my full general partnership team? The next question is, where is it located? Real estate is still all about location. So you need to find the market, but also within that, the sub-market, the little neighborhood, etc., which has job growth, population growth, and diversity of jobs. That is crucial because you don't want to be dependent on just, let's say, in Midland, Odessa, as an example, and I'm just quoting an example, that's totally dependent on, let's say, one military base or one oil industry, as an example, right? And something happens there to that one main employer base, then all the businesses, the economy, everything kind of shuts down in that area. And so you want to make sure your property is located in a market where you are seeing a diversity of industries moving in there. So if you take Dallas as an example, where my properties are located, I have two properties in the suburb called Irving. So Irving is about 10 minutes from the DFW airport. So just your airport jobs proximity is great. But there's about 5 new large companies that have relocated. And every week I'm hearing of more and more companies relocating there. Wells Fargo is going to set up a big center there. The Four Seasons that used to host all these golf tournaments, it used to be back in the day called the GT Byron Nelson Classic, right? That Four Seasons is going to become a Ritz-Carlton. It's going to have a $65 million renovation, where we've got Caterpillar, our Caterpillar, all the farm equipment maker. They relocated after 115 years in Illinois, right there to Irving. So you want to look for all these economic drivers there. So what we call the tailwinds when it comes to economy, rather than the headwinds, so that there's enough jobs, variety of jobs, people to support those jobs. So if a lot of white collar jobs move in, and I have workforce housing apartments with, I target median household incomes of like 60K and up, those folks, you need 4 to 5 of these blue collar jobs for every white collar job that moves in there. So want to look at supply versus demand as well. You don't want to go into a place like, I was looking at College Station as an example of a town where a lot of kids go to college, including mine, and it's about 3 hours from Dallas, an hour from Houston. And that's got a little bit of an oversupply. Too many apartments got built there. So I think that the market and the demand for apartments is going to be slightly less than, say, Dallas, Fort Worth, or Irving, or Carrollton, some of the suburbs of Dallas. The other big one you want to always look for is landlord friendly. What happened during COVID, right? The eviction moratorium was issued. You could not evict anybody. They could sit there for 6, 8, 9, 10 months without paying any rent. And so you want to find landlord-friendly states. So I invest in, of course, Dallas, which is Texas. But along the Sun Belt, these are all more landlord-friendly states than your New York or California. And then if you do get stuck in a slightly blue pocket, even within Texas, you want to find out all the sources of rent relief. So analyze that market. The market is everything. No matter how great the property or the sponsorship team might be, if it's in a bad location, there's very little you can do about it. Real estate is still about location. Who is boots on the ground? That's very, very important. Do they have this level of local market knowledge? I can tell you between counties in the Dallas area, Dallas County, Tarrant County, Johnson County, Collin County, what a big difference there is, whether it comes to the policies, the taxes, and all of the little nuances by the city, the local judges, the city inspectors. One inspector could require something that's different from the other. It's really, really very important to have somebody who's local, who can show up to the property. We had a disaster happen through storm damage, and so we had to have people on site to assess the damage. But the fact that I could drive there in less than 30 minutes was huge, because I could speak to the insurance adjuster. I could speak to, let's say, an inspector when they come for an inspection, when the lender wants to perform an inspection, right? So you want to have somebody boots on the ground, that I kind of touched on earlier. If everything is being done with remote control, yeah, you can have cameras there. By camera images, a lot of things look just fine. But when you go in person, you see all the little flaws. For example, we had concrete repairs done on a driveway that everyone said was looking great, and they were about to pay the vendor the last payment. And I said, let me drive by and check this weekend before we send that payment on Monday. And it was not done to the level that we wanted it to. The quality control just wasn't there. It's the same with interior upgrades. If you don't walk your units periodically, then, whether it's a paint job, whether it's a new appliance, etc. Who's keeping track of all this spending to make sure you get the quality of the jobs that you know? So if the team is located remotely, do they have an asset manager who's local to that property? And do they have that local knowledge? If I want to suddenly go buy a property out in the Carolinas, which is a market that's unfamiliar to me, I would want to partner with somebody that's local there, because without the local knowledge, you are going to not know the trends, the Chamber of Commerce, some of the policies, decisions that are coming into that area, but also something simple like who drives by the property at night? Do you get a pulse for the property at night? Why should that matter? Well, the scene changes at night. How much trouble, how much crime is there? I don't know. What do you smell? What do you see over there? Do you feel safe? So one of my criteria before I make offers on properties or I invest my passive money from an IRA, I like to drive by the property at night, because that gives me a very good feel for how safe is it. Because my target customer is families. I want families. I want that single mom with 2 kids to feel safe in my property. So if I don't feel safe getting out of my car and walking around at night, then I don't invest in that property. And that's very easy for me to do if I'm in the local market already. When team members are not located in the same area where their property is, they have to plan these trips. Property management is aware of it. So everything looks nice and perfect. Everything is cleaned up. That's not the same as surprise visits. So the effect of surprise visits, I can't tell you enough about it. It's the same with Dallas. Somebody might tell you this great address, South Polk Street, as an example. I know exactly where that is. I don't even have to look it up on the map. And the advantage of that is I immediately know, okay, that's a bit of a high crime area. That's in South Dallas. That's right by the Dallas Zoo. I'm not even going to look at that property. An out-of-state investor might say, wow, this is just 10 minutes from downtown Dallas. What a fantastic market. Let me go invest there. This sounds like the best deal. And they may make an offer. Of course, the broker's offering memorandum is going to sing the praises of this location. And they would say, oh, so much Dallas is pumping in money into this area, gentrifying it. It's going to be so great. Look at it in the next 10 years. Well, my hold period in these deals is typically 3 to 5 years. So what's the point in investing in something like that where you have to do the heavy lift, where there's a lot of crime happening in that area? Even if the property itself could be even a brand new construction and look gorgeous and have the best looking gym and pool and whatever amenity. Well, when I drive out of the complex, where am I going to? Do I feel safe going to the grocery store there? What's that area looking like? So no matter how much data and stats you look at online, the local presence, I can't stress this enough. If there's no one with a local presence, how often do you think they're going to visit the property? That to me is a very big deal. Real estate is still very local. You've got to have somebody checking on the property other than the property management company. Think about it. Your property manager on site gets paid, I don't know, 50, 60, 70K kind of salary. There's tens of millions of dollars riding on that. So how do you do your checks and balances without having someone who's boots on the ground? Yeah, I'm emphasizing this point a lot because this is one of my, criteria. There is no way that I would invest in a property if there's no local presence. What are the assumptions? This one is big, guys. This is another big one. When you take a spreadsheet, I'm an engineer. Many of you know that you could pretty much type in any numbers you want into a spreadsheet and change it. I'll give you 2 little numbers. The rent assumption, right? What if I said that I could get $300 of a rent bump just because I'm putting granite countertops or I'm putting stainless steel appliances? I could put any numbers I want into a spreadsheet to make the returns look fancy. Double your money in less than 5 years, triple your money in 6 years, whatever that number is. But who validated those numbers, right? Who validated that number? Did your property management company say, yes, we believe you can get this rent because we own or we manage other properties in that area, so it's very realistic? Who validated the expense numbers? We believe you can run this property at these numbers. So very important to have a budget from a property management company to fill in those rent, other income, expenses, etc. So if you're new to passive investing, the question you ask is, who gave you that number? Who validated that number? How do you know you're going to get that rent? Did the property management company with a local presence, not somebody who's set up in, I don't know, Carolinas and trying to move into Dallas? Well, they don't have a local presence to really know what rents you can get in that area for that type of property. So it's very, very important that every input that goes into a spreadsheet is not coming from me, the general partner, or whoever I'm investing with, that general partner. It needs to come from neutral sources. So the property management company tells you all about income and expenses. The lender gives you the term sheet for the loan. If it's a floating rate loan, I'm telling you, if they're telling you today in a webinar that they're getting into a floating rate loan, until a few days prior to closing, you don't know how much proceeds you're going to get. And if Powell keeps raising these interest rates, then the lender keeps reducing how much in proceeds you'll get. So today being July 15, they might say, we're going to get 10 million in proceeds from the lender. Well, if you're not closing, let's say till the end of August, those could drop to 9 million. We're expecting at least another quarter point increase in July. So who knows what those proceeds could be. What does that mean? It means that if the loan is going to be for a smaller amount to acquire this property, they need more money from investors. So the leverage just went down. What does that mean? Your returns will also go down accordingly. So you have to redo the underwriting because now you're only getting 9 million from the lender instead of 10 million. So be very cautious if it's a floating rate loan, because your leverage, your rate, all of that is not finalized until a few days before the deal closes. And they might need what's called a rate cap. So if the loan interest rates keep going up and you have a floating rate loan, like an ARM, if you will, in residential real estate, you need to cap it so that as Powell keeps on increasing these rates, there is a limit to how much it can be. And the rate cap, purchasing that rate cap, is something you only do a couple of days before closing. So you really don't know. So if you're in a floating rate deal with a general partner, you've already wired your money, and the deal is going to close a few weeks later, be sure to get an update from them a couple of days before the deal closes as to what did you get in proceeds? How different is it from the webinar you presented to me? How different is the rate cap from what your initial assumption was? Be sure to follow up on that. Make sure there is no floating rate loan without a rate cap. We had 4 foreclosures in Houston that hit the Wall Street Journal news earlier this year, back in April. And the biggest common flaw across all of those deals was they were floating rate deals without a cap. And so there was no limit to how high the mortgage could go as interest rates kept going up. That's a big problem. So that's why I'm saying, who made these assumptions of every input in the spreadsheet? Because garbage in is garbage out. What are some stress tests they have done? What cases did they model? Did they model worst case scenarios? And what have they done to overcome challenges in the past? So let's just say with that, the vacancy rate, they're assuming normal operations to be at 90%, 92%, et cetera, occupancy. How low can they go in that occupancy and in their collections and still be able to make the mortgage payment? What is that break-even test, right, for occupancy? What about in terms of rents? If they cannot increase the rents the way they're hoping to increase it, right? They said, I'm going to increase my 1 bedroom by $100 and 2 bedrooms by 150, whatever those numbers are. What happens if it's a 0 rent increase for the next 2 years, just because of the economy or other conditions happening? Can the deal sustain itself? What other kind of stress tests have they done to check if the deal is going to be okay? One of the things we like to model in all of our deals is how low can the economic occupancy be? Does anybody know the difference between a physical occupancy and an economic occupancy? Well, if I have 100 units and 90 units are occupied, my physical occupancy is 90%. Makes sense, right? Well, only if 85 tenants pay and 5 of them are not paying, my economic occupancy is now down to 85% instead of 90%. So did I factor that in? That's very important to factor in. What is my economic occupancy? Meaning, if I'm hoping every month to collect $100,000, But let's say 1 month I'm only collecting $85,000. Can my deal handle that? Or do I have to be collecting 100,000? How long can I last if I am only collecting that $85,000? Let's say it's off-peak season. It's the winter when I take over a property. Generally, people don't move in November and December, right? They like to stay put. They look again at maybe January, February. And then we have what is called a peak leasing season that happens after spring, March through August. And then people kind of settle down by the fall because kids are in schools. Families don't like to move for the holidays. They like to settle down, host holidays, etc. So during peak season, some of your strategies could be different from off-peak season. You may not be able to fill up your units as quickly. Your occupancy might have some, problems. So what kind of stress tests have they done? That's the question you need to be asking, and see if that's a risk that you're willing to tolerate. So let's say that they need at least 80% occupancy at all times for this deal to sustain itself. Then one of the questions to ask is that area pretty famous and consistent for having good occupancy, or has it always had occupancy issues? Let's pick a market like Houston, 4 deals that foreclosed earlier in Houston. Houston doesn't quite have the highest occupancy in every area relative to Dallas. And I mean, that's a very broad statement, but Houston is very, very local. So every few blocks, you might have $1 million homes, and then around the corner, you might have a drug-infested apartment. So that local knowledge of a place like Houston is so crucial. If you don't have local presence in Houston, I would never invest in a deal in Houston. Super important to have that local knowledge of knowing what's a typical occupancy for a property of that type in that little submarket. So what stress tests have they done is a very important question to ask. What is their track record? Very important question. So if I'm going to hire a contractor to do a $50,000 kitchen remodel, am I just going to get somebody off the white pages or yellow pages online and just say, oh, you have the best looking photos in your website. I'm going to hire you, come into my kitchen, do this $50K remodel. What would I rather do? I would want to ask for references. I would probably get references from a neighbor or friend for whom this contractor has done the exact same or similar job. I would want to know a lot more details, such as how well was the job done? Were they on time? Did they stay within the budget? All of those basic questions you would want to ask a contractor. Well, guess what? These investments are $50K investments. You have to do your homework. Who is verifying these numbers? Remember, initially I told you, people have such great presence now on social media. You can literally pay somebody overseas, Fiverr, wherever, and build the prettiest website, take a few professional shots, put a couple of photos of properties, and there you go. You can be really impressive on social media. But who's verifying the track record? Who's going to give you the true story? I could tell you, hey, I tripled people's money in less than 2 years or 3 years. Who's going to verify that? You can't just take somebody for their word when it's such a large investment. You've got to verify their track record with a passive investor. So the easiest way I have found to do that is most people love to brag about their deals. They'll give you an impressive list of deals. They'll say, oh, I've got 1,000 doors. I've got 2,000 doors. Ask them for the name of those properties. And then ask them, how many have you done a full cycle already? And tell me how those returns were. And then say, okay, can somebody verify this for me? Can you give me one passive investor who can send one email? I don't need a 1-hour conversation. But even as somebody who says, I was truly a passive investor in this deal, I don't know, ABC, and I got a return of blank within this time frame. This is true. Distributions were great. Communication was great, etc. So verify it from an unbiased, neutral source. I can't stress this enough. I have made this mistake before, where I trusted somebody just based on their social media presence. They were amazing at marketing, and I invested with them. And my investment, I almost lost some money, but thankfully, my constant nagging helped them sell it during the peak time in 2021, before all these interest rate hikes happened in 2022. So we came back okay. But that's a very, very important question to ask, is how do you verify that track record? The other important thing to note is teams. if teams have not worked together before, there's going to be conflict, because when you meet someone, what happens? Everybody's on their best behavior. You meet them 3-4 times at conferences, you meet them at different events. Sounds like, this is great, I want to invest there, etc. But have they had the hard conversations as a team? Are their roles clearly defined? Sometimes you might get a webinar presentation that only lists 2 or 3 people, and it might be a really large deal. So if it's $50 million deal and you only see 2 or 3 people, I would ask the question, who else is involved here? How many different general partners do you truly have in this deal involved? Or how many different people are going to be involved in this deal after it closes? What are their roles? What are their responsibilities? Do they have a diverse background to cover all bases, like whether it's finance or underwriting versus boots on the ground to do the asset management, etc. So another important piece is, when partnerships start having conflicts, there is so much what I call infighting going on that they sort of lose sight of the passive investors and the deal's performance itself. And so then when the roles are unclear, the partnership conflicts happen, and then there's gaps in the skill set, they're not all working together to go to the same destination. Imagine a flight where the pilot and co-pilot are fighting. How are you going to get to your destination if they're not focused on the route and handle all the turbulence that comes along the way and takes you to a destination? So it's so important to say, how many deals have you guys done before together as partners? What was your biggest challenge when you worked together before? How did you overcome that? What did you do when you worked together that you overcame before? And how do you split your roles and responsibilities to cover all bases? That's a very fundamental question that you have to know about the teams to make sure nothing is missed. So skin in the game. I'm not seeing any comments in the chat box at this time, so I don't know if any questions came by before, but for sure, I would love to know if anybody has any questions so far. I'm going to try to check for a second. I do see some questions. This is great. What are the key points to look for in a subscription agreement after investing in a land deal? I think the subscription agreement question, you have to look at what are your biggest risks. What risks do you see in the deal that could go wrong? And how are they covering it? For example, in a deal, they might say that they're raising $10 million to close this deal, but the subscription documents might say that they could keep raising money up to $15 million. So in that case, they can come back to you in what's called a capital call and ask you more questions. So that's definitely something that could happen. So I would suggest asking even a lawyer to pay them for an hour to review your documents. We did that even on loan documents when it came to investing with, on a bridge deal. We wanted to know under what circumstances a bridge lender can take control of a deal. But another thing I would ask in a land deal is that, is it going to be land forever, or are they planning to build something? And if they're planning to build something, one of the biggest questions I want to ask is, do they have all the zoning permits, etc., figured out? Have they done this before in the city? Have they worked in that city before at all? What are the things that could go wrong and cause delays? If my deal is delayed by another 6 months or longer because of some criteria, because of politics, etc., how does that affect my investment? And generally with land deals, depending on the location you're at, what is really the market and the scope for it in the coming years? Is it really going to go up? What kind of a place is it? Why should I expect the land in this particular location to go up in value, right? Ultimately, that's the question you ask, whether you're investing in Amazon stock or Apple stock or land or in a building. That's the ultimate question to ask is, why do you believe this is going to go up in value? Are you going to get any money at all during the whole period? Because apartments generate rent every month, right? So eventually you start getting what's called distributions or cash flow, even a few percentages. Are you getting anything? So what they presented to you in a webinar slide that made you want to invest in the deal verify that that's there in the fine print, because the fine print can have a lot more disclaimers. Remember, the entire fine print of a subscription document was written by the lawyer who is working and paid by that sponsorship team. He's not, or she's not, working for you, the limited partner or passive investor. So sometimes it might be worth looking through the fine print on that to see under what circumstances you could lose your money. Are you willing to take that risk? How long is the hold period? They might tell you today, oh, in 3 years, we plan to sell it. In the webinar, that's what they may have told you. But your subscription documents might say that that's indefinite. What if it's 7 or 8 years? Are you okay with tying up your money in a land deal? So real estate, one of the biggest things I will tell you is that it's illiquid. So don't plan for your money to get back to you anytime soon when it's a real estate investment. That's why I say figure out your liquidity and what amount of money you have to have with you. And then the rest of it is what you invest in these investments. And that's why I love a Quest Trust kind of IRA, because typically for most of us, that's money we're not counting on anytime in the near future. We typically have at least a 5, if not 10-year horizon for our retirement. And that's why I love investing with retirement funds. So that's one question. And it's somebody saying that they're going to build custom homes there in 3 years. Is the person who raised money for the land the same as the person who's going to build those homes? Or are they going to eventually just sell it to somebody, a developer, get the money and give you your money back? So you need to understand all the phases in it. You need to be ready for your money to be illiquid for quite some time. That's the biggest thing I'll tell you on a development deal is unless they promised you a pref return of some kind, you've got to understand what's the source of those funds. Are they raising extra to provide you back some kind of a return, etc.? Florida and Texas are great markets. I really love those two markets. And those are excellent markets. Only thing I would say to watch out for is your insurance. Realistically, talk to somebody who's insuring properties or deals in Florida, in Texas, anywhere else. Be careful of those coastal markets like Corpus Christi. It's a great place to visit, but I'm not going to invest in a property there. It's very tempting to invest in these oceanfront kind of properties, Airbnbs, rentals, etc. But your insurance could easily double. Some companies pull out of certain markets. So be very careful about that too, because whoever might be willing to insure you now is not going to insure you next year. And you'll be scrambling to find somebody to insure you, and it could be more than double. I'm seeing that even in places like Houston. So if you've got a Houston deal where you're already invested, ask these questions periodically. Ask them how much. Of course, property taxes have been going up like crazy in Texas, even though our property values haven't matched that, especially with these interest rate hikes. So keep a tab on those expenses, because your taxes and your insurance count towards what we call the net operating income. And increasing the net operating income is what increases your property value. So if taxes and insurance are hurting you, you've got to be very careful about that. Skin in the game is an important point in the sense that a lot of people take acquisition fee up front. So on the day that the deal closes, they get an acquisition fee, which could be, tens of thousands of dollars or even $100,000 and up kind of money. So once the deal closes, does each member of the general partnership team have any money still left in the deal, right? So let's just say that they get an acquisition fee of $100,000 and they're putting $50,000 in the deal. Well, really, they actually made $50K at the day that the deal closed, and they have no money or skin in the game left in the deal. So that means if the deal somehow doesn't perform well, do they have any financial risk? Obviously, their reputation is a little bit at risk. They may not get repeat investors, but financially, do they have anything to lose if the deal goes badly? That's what I mean by skin in the game after you take all your fees and after the deal closes. The other piece that I like to know is, how are you showing me that you are putting your investors first? Is the return model structured in favor of the investor? Some people in some deals cap the maximum that an investor can make. So they will say that once you reach a certain IRR, the split changes. Initially from a 70-30 down to a 50-50 as an example. They're going to say, once I double your money, that's it. Even if the market cooperates, when cap rates compressed, etc., and things happen despite whatever we did, and the deal does really well, A lot of sponsors still say the most you're going to get is this much. So watch for that. Why should they cap it? The deal does well. Why can't we share the profits evenly throughout? That's a question that I like to ask is, if the deal is making money, let's share it. After all, without so many limited partners, you wouldn't be able to close the deal. You wouldn't be able to buy such a large deal. Your investors are a big piece of why you're able to even buy this deal. So share the profits a little more generously. I understand you've already taken an acquisition fee. You're probably taking an asset management fee. You might even have a disposition fee. So why don't you put investors first in this return model? So that's a question that I like to ask. Is there any kind of a contingency plan? Why am I saying this? This year in 2023, we've had 10 continuous interest rate hikes. A lot of people in 2021 bought deals on a floating rate bridge loan because those are the loans by which great returns could be given to investors in underwriting models. But some people forgot to get a rate cap. So now they're scrambling to buy a rate cap. So a rate cap is something that, as an example, back in July of 2021, I paid $40,000 to buy a rate cap for a deal. Today, 2 years later, that rate cap is actually worth $400,000. And it's still got another year of life left. But to give you an example, it's because these interest rates went up so much that a rate cap is worth that much money today, and the lender required us to buy one. So when you don't buy a rate cap, then you don't have that cap on there. So now what's happening is called a capital call. So if you're not familiar with the term capital call, it means that the sponsors, the general partnership team, doesn't have enough money right now. So the lender has to go, or they have to go buy a rate cap now, either because the lender wants it or because their mortgage has more than doubled and it keeps on going up with these interest rate hikes, which is not coming down anytime soon. They can't afford it. Their DSCR, debt service coverage ratio, is less than 1. What that means, it's like your household, right? Whatever paychecks you get in your household, whatever income you get in your household, that income is not enough to pay your house mortgage. That's a problem. It's the same thing that's happening to apartments. All the rents that they have increased, all the income that they're generating is not enough to pay the mortgage. So they are under in that sense, right? They're below water now in these deals. What they're trying to do is they're trying to buy a rate cap. And I just gave you an example where my rate cap, even though 2 years of it is already used up, is now $400,000, and that's a smaller deal. So imagine these large deals, right? Like some of the Houston portfolio deals that foreclosed earlier this year, $800 and $1,000. That you're talking $1 million and up to buy these rate caps. And so who has that liquidity? When they don't have that liquidity, they go back to you, the investors, or to me. I got a note for a capital call, and I have to contribute to that capital call. Otherwise, my shares get diluted. So I want to know how liquid the sponsors are. A lot of them don't have much liquidity. And so if they don't have enough liquidity, or they have enough liquidity for one deal, but now they're in 10 different deals, then they don't have the money to contribute to the deal. So then they come to you, the investor, or to me, the passive investor, which I had 3 capital calls happen this year because they don't have enough money. They didn't plan for a rate cap, or the deal didn't perform well enough to cover the mortgage. All of these problems happened in my deals this year. And so I'm telling you, it's important to know how liquid these sponsors are. If they don't have liquidity and they're living paycheck to paycheck and they're just saying, I'm going to work really hard to make money for you, that's great. I trust you. I'm sure you mean well, but that's not enough. I need to know how liquid you are, because I don't want to get the first call to contribute more money into the deal. I want to know that you can cover it up to a certain amount. And so definitely make sure they have some high net worth, high liquidity people in the deal to be able to contribute before they come to passive investors. It's a very tough question to ask them. What are you going to do if the deal goes badly and $300,000 is needed in the next 2 weeks? Do you all as sponsors have the liquidity? Under what circumstances will you make a capital call? So this is something that's written in your agreement. So read your subscription documents, your private placement memorandum, really understand it. Ask these questions about how liquid are the sponsors? What are you going to do? Like, I'll give you an example. In Feb 2021, We had 8 continuous days of temperatures below freezing, which is something Dallas is not used to. Dallas just doesn't understand temperatures like that. Like it's 102 degrees in July. That's what we understand. Yeah, we know it's going to be 100 degrees. So when that happened, a lot of things got frozen, burst pipes, etc. I was very blessed that I only had 2 burst pipes and flooded units and a laundry center completely destroyed. Some people had 40, 50, 60 units kind of destroyed within like a 200 unit complex. That means that's about 50 units that are not generating any income every month. All of those residents had to go somewhere else. You have to repair, rehab all of those units, turn them into occupiable units before you're going to generate revenue again. And how long is that going to take? And how much money does that take? Contractors are so busy when something like that happens, they are going to go to the person who can pay them immediately. So do you have some liquidity to pay for that? Because it takes a while for the insurance adjuster to come out, approve the thing, and then give you your check. So how liquid is a sponsorship team? Are they able to pay for repairs, contingency, and float the deal for a little bit? Or are they so, tight with their money? They don't have much excess money. They're not that liquid. They're living paycheck to paycheck themselves. Then that's a problem. So to give you a quick recap, the first and foremost thing is always going to be, if anyone wants to put it in the chat box, please do. But the most important thing, again, is going to be the team, the jockey. Who's going to run it? Who's going to run the deal for you? That's the most important question to ask. What is their experience in that local market in running a deal of that type? So if I've never done a construction development deal before and I'm coming to you with this offer, you should ask me, who in your team is experienced doing a development deal? Because I've never done one. I've only done buying existing apartments. That's very important. The next one is the location. Location is still everything. Everything. You cannot, it's very hard to fight an uphill battle of going to the wrong location. And so the crime, the median income, etc., there has to be able to pay for the rents that you want. Who is boots on the ground? Never miss the local presence. Without a local presence, I don't invest in deals because I'm going to be paying for all those first-class flights of those quarterly visits when everything looks perfect and they put selfies and photos of them in the property and send you these perfect-looking videos. Well, that's not the same as actually showing up to the property when there's a problem at short notice. Big difference. What are the assumptions? This is huge, guys. You've got to ask them who gave you those numbers that you put into the spreadsheet. Did the property management company say you can actually get those rents? Did they agree to those payroll and marketing expenses? What about your insurance and taxes, right? In Texas, taxes are huge. Did a tax protest company tell you that this is reasonable assumption for that county for taxes in the coming years? What about insurance? Did you get an insurance quote? How has insurance been in those areas like Florida versus Dallas? Very big difference in your insurance cost per door. What about the past claims the property has made? Is there anything in the floodplain? Maybe 3 buildings are in a floodplain, not because they're in a coastal area, but because there's a creek running by, right? There's just so many assumptions that go into underwriting that garbage in truly is garbage out. The other one, stress test. What kind of stress modeling have they done? Risk management, right? In any project, if you're in corporate, what are the risks? What are you doing to mitigate those risks? What is the track record verified by a neutral source, not their own, self-promotion on social media? Has the team worked together before? Are they cohesive? Do they have skin in the game? What financial risk are they taking? Or is it just you, the passive investor, taking all the financial risk and putting investors first in their return model and their contingency plan? Do you do pre-investment feasibility studies with investors? I'm not sure what a pre-investment feasibility study would mean, but what I do is I have a poll or a pulse on my general investors. So the people who invested, let's say, in 4 or 5 of my deals in the past, I have at least a monthly touch point with them to say, hey, what are you looking at? What's your general, reluctance in investing? What do you feel about this economy, etc.? So I do have a monthly pulse with my investors to see what they're looking for. Like some of them told me, I don't want to invest in an old 60s, 70s kind of property. I only want to invest in newer properties. Some others said, I want to do only value add. I don't want you to do something too brand new without enough potential for you to improve its value. I don't want just a pure yield play. Some others told me, I'm never going to invest again in a deal in certain markets. So in terms of feasibility studies, as far as I do the worst case scenarios and what am I doing to minimize those risks, that's what I do on my deals. I hope that answers your question. And if not, I mean, yeah, you can ask it in a different way. But I post a lot on LinkedIn as well as Facebook. And I have another free resource, which is a checklist to download from my website. It's to vet a sponsorship team. It's a list of questions. In addition to some of the questions I already have here, I have a more thorough list of questions in there, one of which is I like to do a background check. I want to know if they've had a bankruptcy in the past and how long ago that was. If it was during the 2008 downturn versus it was only 5 years ago, or it was during the time that they were also doing multifamily investments. I want to dig a little bit more into that. So if you are looking to invest with any team in any deal, it starts with the team and then some of the metrics of the deal, but don't forget to ask these questions. And this is a free resource. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on my website, engineeredcapital.com, engineered-capital.com. Thank you for your time. Your Saturday afternoon is precious, and I'm very, very grateful for you to spend it with me. I appreciate your time. Have a fabulous weekend.
Thank you so much. And I will give everyone a moment just to get their last questions out. Make sure they can scan this QR code if they want to get in contact with you. I do want to say a special thank you. I know that whenever our investors, or really any investor, whether IRA or not, they're really looking for that due diligence aspect. And a lot of people are looking exactly for what you're offering, which is that checklist. What are the marks that I need to hit to make sure that this is going to be a successful venture for me? So thank you for that. I know this is going to be a really great resource, not only for those who are able to attend live, but for us to send out. We do archive this on our YouTube page, so we'll certainly have that sent out to other individuals looking for what you are telling us about today. I do have a follow-up from M. Musa. Let me put that on the screen for you.
Do you do for outside investors not in your investments as a service? I haven't offered any service so far, but you can certainly email me or you can contact me in LinkedIn. And I'm not sure what you're looking for, but my limited expertise is in multifamily. So I don't know what kind of investments you're looking at and what kind of feasibility studies, but for sure, I am happy to help anyone. And, connect with me on LinkedIn. I post so much there because I'm also a passive investor, not just a general partner saying, hey, invest passively, and then not doing it myself, So I practice what I preach. So anything I can help you with and save you money, that's the point of it. So thank you very much.
Perfect. Got some kudos for you in the chat that I threw up on the screen. Seems like everyone really enjoyed your presentation. So again, want to say a special thank you to you. And if there are no other questions, I am going to run through a few announcements on the Quest side. So I'm going to throw those up on the screen here momentarily. And like I said, any more questions, we can address those in just a moment. But we want to thank you for joining. Oh, yes, ma'am.
If I could say something really quick, multifamily apartments is what I know of existing apartments. And Quest is having a great event in Dallas next month. And I will be at that event. So if any of you plan to attend that, I would love to meet you in person. I forget the date, but it's a Saturday in August that I'm sure you'll mention.
Yeah, absolutely. So funny that you mentioned it. I'll come back to this one, but let's bring up the Elite Multifamily Summit. This is what's taking place in August. You can meet Sandhya live and in person. The early bird tickets, I do believe that those are currently on sale. If you would like to get a ticket for it, it's going to be a really, really great event. We've got some wonderful speakers coming up for this exact purpose, which I'm actually going to show you this one instead. There's some of our speakers for the lineup. Scan that QR code. You'll be able to register right through the online link. You can also reach out to us at our IRA specialist email, as we all have a discount code that we can provide to you. So if you would like to attend, we would love to have you. It is shaping up to be a really, really great event for us.
It's a fantastic event. The person right in the middle is Dan Hanford. He runs a fantastic conference in Charlotte that I was at last month. Person next to him is Brad Sumrock. He's got a great conference coming up, AIMNetCon. So those are incredible people that are over there. So
Yeah,
you'll love it.
a lot of great opportunity for you there. So that one's what's upcoming in August. That'll be on the 12th in Irving. So mark it on your calendars. Get registered as soon as you can before those ticket sales close out. I also want to mention for those who have been familiar with Quest for a number of years now, is that we typically put on an annual Quest Expo. Well, excitedly, we have put a date on the calendar for 2024. So we're going to be starting back up again with this event on June 27th through the 29th of 2024. We have our tickets going on sale now. So these are the extreme early bird tickets. For those of you who have attended the event in the past, you know exactly how valuable it can be. We had upwards of 800 attendees at our previous expo that we hosted in 2022. And we are expecting to surpass those numbers. This is again going to be in Irving, Texas. For those of you who are local to Dallas, it's right up the road from you. But we have people who travel all over the country in order for that event to take place. So we would very much like to have you out. And I'm going to close. I actually think we have one more question for you, if you don't mind me throwing that up there on the screen.
It's not my job to check if somebody's an accredited investor because I do a lot of what we call 506B, like Bravo. But yes, if I did a 506C like Charlie, then parallel markets or there are other services that do the accredited investors check. And we would need that certificate for a 506C offering in time before we can take their money as a wire. We would also accept a letter from their accountant.
So would that speak to the next follow-up question, which is self-certification enough?
It is enough on a 506B like Bravo offering. In a 506C like Charlie, it is required. I would need to see that in writing before I can accept their funds.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for answering those questions. And I'm going to add this to the stream, just the very last item for us all. Like I said, we archive all of our education through our YouTube, our LinkedIn, our Facebook page. Check us out there. We're here every Saturday, 12 noon Central Time, to talk with you about different asset classes, all on the alternative side. You can also, if you're local to Texas, join us in person at our Houston, Austin, and Dallas office. I'll put a link in the chat for you to check out our events. And then someone asked the question, events happening in Tampa or the Orlando, Central Florida area. Personally, I know that Quest is not hosting events out there at this moment. We are involved in some events in that area. So again, I'll put our information in the chat to reach out to our IRA specialist, and we can talk to you about some of the events that we're involved in out there as well.
Yeah, I've seen Quest have a booth at almost every major conference, whether that was Salt Lake City for Best Ever or, Multifamily Investor Nation by Dan Hanford in Charlotte. There is something coming up in Orlando. So if you want to reach out to me as well, I can tell you, but I bet Quest is out there. There's a lot of multifamily related events happening.
Yeah, we actually just got home from Think Realty that was happening in Tampa, Florida as well. So that just took place last week.
That's what I remember.
Yeah. Any last thoughts for our viewers before we close out today's session?
Just be careful with your money. And anytime you get pressured into investing quickly, that's a red flag. Do not invest quickly. Do not feel pressured to invest. There will always be another investment with the same sponsor. Get to know them well. Even if it's a 506C and you don't have to establish a relationship, it's better to take your time because these are large investments. Another red flag for me is a solo sponsor. So don't ever invest in a deal if there's only one person, because if they get hit by a bust, COVID, whatever happens in life, you want to know who else you can talk to. So make sure you know at least everybody in that general partnership team who's going to be controlling the deal after it closes.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for spending some of your Saturday with us. I know that this will be a really great resource for us all on, like I said, the IRA side, personal side, whatever it may be for you. So thank you so much for your time today. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their weekend.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.